Kyle Klingman with Track Wrestling alongside Andy Hamilton for our second high school wrestling preview show. Last week was big. This week is just a little bit bigger, not because the states are any better, but it's because we have more state wrestling championships this weekend than any other time on the Track Wrestling platform. It's our busiest week of the year, and it's exciting. You can see all the states right back here, but this is a time like no other.
Yeah, it doesn't get bigger than this. Doesn't get better than this. This is an awesome weekend of high school wrestling. As you mentioned, just the volume of state tournaments that we're going to have, but also the high quality that we're going to have. I mean, you talk about, a state like Washington, it's a spectacle up there, almost like a mini Fargo up in the Tacoma Dome. They call it the MAC Classic. And then you go to Iowa and 32 consecutive years of sellouts for Saturday night state championship finals. And then, just keep going across the map. Illinois doesn't get a whole lot better than Class 3A in Illinois. Just some unbelievable scraps that we'll see over the course of the next 3 days there. And, I don't want to keep going here because I could keep going and going and going, Kyle, on the high-quality wrestling that we're going to see across the country this weekend. But this is as good as it gets.
14 states. Want to make sure we mention all of them that you get to see: Iowa, Illinois, Nebraska, Washington, Indiana, Colorado, Missouri, Tennessee, North Carolina, Virginia, New Mexico, North Dakota, Texas, and Arkansas. That's on the boys' side. And then the girls have Missouri, Texas, Arkansas, and Washington. We'll pause on Washington. You mentioned the spectacle. It's an unbelievable state. And just a shout out to Lake Stevens' Brent Barnes. He's the head coach out there. He was the girls' national team coach. He was on the cadet world team for the girls last year in Sofia, Bulgaria. He was actually the coach of actor Chris Pratt. Chris Pratt placed 5th at the state championships, and something I think he's proud of.
Yeah, I had a chance to visit with him a couple years ago out at the USA Wrestling Foundation Gala in Los Angeles, and chance to talk to him a little bit about his high school experience. Introduced him as Washington State medalist Chris Pratt. He's also done some other incredible things in his professional career as an actor, but we know him as a Washington State medalist.
We have that clip. We're going to show it to you so you can get a feel for what his high school wrestling experience meant to Chris Pratt.
Hello.
Track Wrestling here, Los Angeles, Beat the Streets Gala with Washington State medalist.
Washington State medalist, thank you.
Slash actor. Chris Pratt.
Wrestling medalist first, followed by actor Chris Pratt. How you doing?
Good.
What's up, Track Wrestling?
Well, let's talk about that a little bit. Your high school experience, you wrestled for Brett Barnes up in Washington.
That's right.
What were some of your fondest recollections of that experience?
Honestly, the fond recollections are the community that's created in a wrestling program. I'm still very close with Brent. We talk all the time. The friends that I made, I got to be captain of that team, and I was really proud of our team. We had a lot of great champions that came through those halls, and a very well decorated program in the state of Washington. And my memories, I have fond memories of camp, going to wrestling camp. In Idaho and Oregon, going on the road for wrestling tournaments, wrestling in the MAC Classic tournaments, and going to these big. We won the state dual meet championship, and it came down to my match, and I won. And I beat a kid, and it was cool. Those are the fond memories. But I look also back fondly on the really tough memories. I think that's probably, to me, that's the thing that really sticks with me. Because I've had fun my whole life. I always have fun no matter what I'm doing. But wrestling was a certain kind of tough that sometimes wasn't fun, and I think that element of it is what makes it great for kids. Is finishing and completing an entire season, going and gutting out a match and winning or losing, and learning how to win or lose with grace and putting your heart and your soul on the line, and every bit of your technique and your training, and still get beat. That's the kind of stuff that really, I think, makes you. And so I look back fondly on those moments, even though in the moment they were very difficult. I really encourage any parent to take their kid to a wrestling program, a wrestling practice somewhere. It's good for kids to go through that.
Great to hear from Chris Pratt about his high school wrestling experience, but as we get into what we get to experience on this week's Track Wrestling platform, let's start with the number ones. 195 has a stud, Rocky Elam, a senior out of Staley, Missouri, signed with Missouri, and you know that Brian Smith is happy to have him be a Tiger.
Absolutely, and not to just have one Elam, but to have two of them. His older brother, Zach, is at Missouri, redshirting this season, but a guy who, as a true freshman a year ago, was a round to 12 guy at heavyweight. So to be able to pair those two at the back of their lineup is going to be a tremendous coup for Brian Smith and company with the Tigers. But Rocky Elam, a guy who, as you mentioned, number one in the country at 195 pounds, a state champion a year ago, a guy who has split this season between Colorado Springs and Kansas City. He's been part of USA Wrestling's Elite Accelerator program. So he's getting some high-level competition around the world this year, but then able to take those skills back and put them to use this weekend at the Missouri State Championships.
You mentioned Iowa, all the sellouts. It really is a state championship like no other because small towns flock to the state championships in Des Moines. Sometimes it's like a ghost town. You covered it for so many years when you were with the Iowa City Press-Citizen and the Des Moines Register. Explain what small town Iowa wrestling's like.
Well, there's the joke that, the last person to leave for Des Moines turn out the lights. So, and it's just part of the fabric of small towns like Lisbon and Gilbertville, where those two programs are going to do battle. We'll talk about it a little bit more, but those two programs are going to do battle over the course of the next 3 days for the Class 1A title. A couple teams that we have ranked in our track wrestling midseason top 50 teams in the country. So keep an eye on that one.
120, Drake Ayala. He's the number one wrestler in the country. He's out of Fort Dodge. He hasn't committed anyone yet, so he's still out on the market, but a guy that when you watch him, you see why he's number one.
Yeah, absolutely. A lot of fun to watch. Super high pace, just a goer. And as you mentioned, he's a highly coveted prospect right now. Iowa, Ohio State, Michigan, North Carolina, Iowa State, Northern Iowa. Those are kind of the 6 teams in the mix right now for Drake Ayala. Somebody's going to be really happy about adding him to their program, but a guy that has performed really well on the national stage as well as down in Des Moines. He's a returning state champ, a guy who is a 2-time Fargo freestyle national champ. So, as you mentioned, it's going to be one to keep an eye on, a recruiting race there, but certainly a guy you're not going to want to miss over the course of the next 3 days.
Northern Iowa got a big sign with Cale Happel out of Lisbon. His brother is at Iowa, so they're going to be at different schools, but 138, number 3 in the country. We've seen him compete against some of the best competition this year, and he's won a lot of those matches. Cale Happel is going to be a special, special talent for Northern Iowa.
Yeah, you mentioned the match we got to see him win over in Independence, first weekend of the season, knocked off Ryan Sokol, guy who was on the Cadet World team this past summer, and Cale Happel comes in with some serious credentials of his own. He's coming into this weekend with 210 career victories, which I think probably by the time the weekend's over, he's going to wind up second all time in Iowa history on the wins chart. But a lot of history in the Happel family. Their father Dean was a 3-timer. You mentioned his older brother Carter, a 4-timer, and then Cale trying to join Carter, be the second set of brothers to win 4 titles in Iowa, also joining the Riders. Bart Ryder and Mac Ryder won 4 titles for, as we mentioned, Gilbertville, Don Bosco.
And just a ton of history out of Lisbon. If you don't know, Royce Alger, 2-time NCAA champion out of there. Brad Smith is the all-time wins leader as far as state championships. Did it between Lisbon and Iowa City High. But Morning Stars, some names that you're probably familiar with. But just a great legacy and a lot of really rabid fans there, and you got to love that.
Yeah, and the best part is they've got a rival that's just the same.
That's awesome. We go down to Indiana. They have some great kids. We're going the number 2s, 132. Number 2 in the country, Jesse Mendez, sophomore out of Crown Point, Indiana. And then 195, number 3, Silas Allred, senior out of Shenandoah, Indiana. He's signed with Nebraska. Indiana has some kids you're really going to want to keep an eye on.
Yeah, especially because it's a 1 classification state, so you see some super high-level finals matches and a lot of entertaining stuff there. And certainly Jesse Mendez, he's at the top of the list of the guys you want to watch. He's number 2 in the country at 132 pounds, had a stint where he was number 1 when Blair Academy's Shane Van Ness was sidelined for part of this season. But Jesse Mendez, a guy who had a tremendous offseason, made the Cadet World team in freestyle, had a great tournament out in Akron to make that team. And then he has followed it up with another really strong sophomore season. He went undefeated as a freshman, comes in as a guy that, can go out and attack legs and put a lot of points on the board. So he's one you're going to watch. And then certainly you go to the other end of the lineup, 195 pounds, Silas Allred, a Nebraska commit. last year made some history, became Henry County's first state champion, looking to follow that up with another one here as a senior.
Illinois just keeps bringing it. They have a lot of great kids, and we've even seen that with their investment at the USA Wrestling National Duels. They just bring great talent, and it just comes through with having some kids in the top 5 here that we get to talk about. 106, number 3 in the country, Cannon Webster, freshman out of Washington High School in Illinois. Of course, he's unsigned being a freshman, but a kid that really knows how to bring it.
Yeah, a guy who placed 3rd last year in Fargo in both styles. He comes in ranked 3rd in the country at 106 pounds. You mentioned that Illinois team, that the off-season program, the freestyle Greco program. We saw the 3 guys we're going to talk about from Illinois: Cannon Webster, Hayden Kopus, Joel Vanderveer, key parts of what Team Illinois was able to do this past summer.
Hayden Kopus, number 3 at 285 pounds, signed with Wisconsin. And then Joel Vanderveer, Jr. out of Warren Township. He is number 4, signed with Northwestern. And then we go to Colorado. What a cool story here. This is unbelievable. And it's kind of mind-boggling history that I'm going to let you share.
Yeah, so Colorado has never had 2 teammates win their 4th state title in the same year, but Windsor has a chance to accomplish that feat this year with Dominic Serrano and Isaiah Salazar both going for their 4th title this week. So keep an eye on those 2 guys. They're going to be teammates for the rest of the week, and then they're going to split ways and be on opposite ends in the Big Ten with Serrano, a Nebraska commit, Salazar going to Minnesota. But, they're going to be in a team race together this weekend with Windsor trying to win a state championship as a team out in Colorado.
When you talk to college coaches, one of the consistent themes they say is it's the hardest weight class to recruit is heavyweight, because a lot of times they go to play football. But I'll tell you what, North Carolina State got a really good one out of number 5, Isaac Trumbull, senior from Millard South, Nebraska, and they got to be happy with what they're getting because, as we said, it's hard to recruit heavyweights, but Nebraska's had a couple good ones.
Yeah, so I don't know, Kyle, if anybody's had a more dominant season in high school wrestling this year than Isaac Trumbull at number 5 at heavyweight. He had been in the top 3 at 220 pounds before making the jump up to heavyweight for the postseason, but he's 46-0, 40 pins. 38 of those pins have been in the first period. And then add on 4 forfeits, a major, and a 7-1 win. The major was against another kid from Nebraska who's ranked in the top 15 nationally. So Isaac Trumbull's had a really, really good senior season. And certainly, I keep mentioning guys you're going to want to watch. He's right at the top of that list this weekend too.
We mentioned the top 5s, but there's a couple potential matchups that you might want to keep your eye on here. Illinois at 126 pounds in 3A. You have a possible semifinal between number 8, Jacob Rundell, and number 9, Dylan Ragusin of Montini Catholic, Rundell of Oak Park River Forest. That will likely happen, but boy, some big matchups in your own state championship, and they're nationally ranked.
Yeah, cool. As I mentioned at the top, Illinois 3A, you get stuff like this year after year after year. There's just such tremendous depth in those weight classes, but also elite competitors, and these 2 are 2 of the best nationally at 126 pounds. They've split 2 matches this season. The last one went in favor of Jake Rundell. He got takedown in overtime to win that one, but, probably won't be the last of battles with these 2 guys either. I mean, we're talking about 2 guys that are going off to the Big Ten as well. Rundell's going to be going to Purdue. Ragusin is a Michigan recruit, so keep an eye on those 2 guys.
And then Nebraska has a potential finals matchup between some studs. 132, 3A potential finals match between number 6, Jacason Burks of Omaha Burke versus Connor Kanopik of Millard South. I have no reason to believe that won't happen.
Yeah, so they've met up once earlier in this year, and we're lucky to just be talking about this because there was a scare with Connor Kanopik earlier in the year where I think a bruised spinal column he had after this match with Jacason Burks. It was one of his 2 losses this season, an injury default loss, but certainly, super high-level competitors with exceptional Greco skills, and, Jacason Burks can attack the legs really well too. He's going for his 3rd title in Nebraska. After that, he's headed off to Oklahoma State.
We'll just mention briefly some of the team races. You mentioned Iowa. Team race in 1A, you have Gilbertville, Don Bosco, and Lisbon. These guys really have a heated rivalry. That's one you'll want to keep an eye on. 3A, Southeast Polk and Waverly Shell Rock. Fort Dodge is a dark horse. They could be in there, but probably those two teams. And then every state's different. Illinois does not keep team scores for the traditional state championships. Their main focus is on the team championship with the dual team. They do have that component, but no team score. But Montini Catholic has had at least 3 individual state champions each of the last 3 seasons. This year could be 4. And then Virginia, last year, New Kent ended Christiansburg's 17-year title run last year in Class 3. And all of that, you catch your breath, and we're going to be able to have a great weekend of high school state wrestling championships. And it's just fun to be able to run through this and talk about what we get to see.
Yeah, absolutely. And looking forward to coming back to you every night here the next 3 nights, being able to break it down and show you guys some highlights and recap all the action around the country.
We're going to do that. Remember, 14 state wrestling championships on the Track Wrestling platform. Make sure you tune in. We'll see you tomorrow.